Some retirement plans look perfect on paper and still don't bring peace. Today, Chris Pollard explains why retirement planning has to go beyond the numbers so you can move forward with clarity, confidence, and a life that actually fits. This is the Your Next Success podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Sangal. I am a life-first career coach and strategist on a mission to normalize questioning your career, because I believe each of us is made on purpose for a purpose only we can fulfill. The longer we live out of alignment with who we are, what we do best, and why we are here, the more we miss out, and the more the world misses out on what only we can give. The Your Next Success podcast is where we explore how to build a career that truly fuels your life. We talk about self-discovery, smart job search strategies, professional growth, and you will hear stories from people who have navigated big career transitions themselves so you can create a life-first career and become your own version of authentic success. My guest today is Chris Pollard. Chris is a West Point graduate, a U.S. Army veteran, and the principal of Great Path Planning in New York. For more than 15 years, he's helped high-net-worth families prepare for retirement, especially the part that most plans ignore: how to actually live well once the work stops. He's also the author of Untangling the Golden Knot, a practical write-in guide that blends financial planning with reflection, so retirement becomes more than a milestone. It becomes the life that you're building and ready for. Retirement planning is supposed to bring relief. You run the numbers, you build the plan, and you reach the milestone. Yet, for many people, the tension doesn't disappear. Chris Pollard understands why. In this conversation, he shares how his own life shaped the way that he thinks about time, responsibility, and readiness, and why a solid financial plan does not automatically translate into peace of mind. We talk about what's missing when retirement is treated as a calculation instead of a transition, and how clarity comes from knowing what you're retiring into, not just what you're leaving behind. This is retirement planning beyond the spreadsheet, where confidence, meaning, and intention matter as much as the math. Welcome, Chris, to Your Next Success. I'm super excited to be talking with you today.
Yeah, it's good to be speaking with you as well.
Awesome. Okay, so as you know, I love talking about people's journeys, their careers, career transitions, and all of that. So we're going to get to all of the awesome work that you do today, including your amazing book, Untangling the Golden Knot, Confronting Your Retirement Worries and Knowing When Enough is Enough. So we're going to get to that. You help a lot of people with their financial security. And can we start with you? Where were you born? Did you have any brothers and sisters? What was life like at the earliest ages and stages for you?
Sure. So I grew up in New York on Long Island, about 30 minutes outside of New York City, in the suburbs of Long Island, kind of near the beaches, close, be at the beaches in 15, 20 minutes. On the North Shore, the South Shore, so we're kind of in the middle, so it's nice. Was born into a family. My parents were getting divorced around the time I was born. I had one full brother, and then both my parents remarried, and then I have half siblings as well. So I had a half brother and then on one side, and then a half brother and half sister on the other side. So kind of a blended family, multiple siblings going on. So yep, lived with my grandmother for a few years and my mother, and then when my mother remarried, lived with my with my mother and stepfather, and then my mother passed away early in life. So then I lived with my dad and stepmother after that. So,
how old were you when that happened?
Just turned 7. So it was a very early life event for me, which influences a lot of the stuff we talk about in the book, and thinking about the impacts of how you spend your time in life. And if you're going to do a transition, what are you transitioning from and to? A lot of that comes from, seeing how life can be pretty short sometimes. So.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So when you were in your youngest stages, what did you love doing for fun?
I very much was into imaginative play, playing with action figures, things like that. And I also like to build things. So doing like Legos constructs, if people remember, like in the 80s, Lincoln Logs, Tinker Toys, like that kind of stuff. And then like building huge fortresses and then having armies attack and like, very imaginative, but with
Yeah.
engineering type stuff baked
Yeah.
in. So that's a lot of what I really enjoyed doing as a kid. And then eventually started doing like piano and music stuff as well. So
And what did your parents do for work? Sometimes there's generational interests,
yes.
some could say. Yeah.
Yeah. So my dad did computer networking. So started out working at banks doing their computer networks, and then worked for Barnes and Noble, Sony Music, and then finally a market research company, making sure all their data was secure, backed up, transferable. And he was the director of networking. And then my biological mother did electronics engineering, some stuff like that. And then my stepfather was an electrical engineer, and my stepmother was a nurse originally and then became a teacher. So,
Interesting.
yeah. So that's
Interesting.
kind of
So you
like,
had a lot of really, you had some helping people
yes.
influences. You had a lot of this engineering mindset influences and really getting things done and systems thinking.
Yes.
Um, Fascinating. Now, how about when you went to school? Were there any particular subjects that or activities that you liked more than others?
I very much like math science. I was I'd say in high school, elementary school, I really loved science. And at first I kind of struggled in reading and math. And then after a while, it just kind of clicked. Around fourth grade, my parents switched us to a school that used self-instruction curriculum. So you didn't have to sit there and be taught and then attempt to keep up and kind of work on your own. Your teacher would step in and help you, which is the more classical model in classrooms now. Instead, it was, here's your books. You do these pages in your workbooks. Let us know if you need help. So you do a lot of independent reading and learning, and in a quiet environment with little distractions. So that was very transformative for me academically, to learn on my own. And I feel like I just remember it clicking one day, like, oh, I can do this. And then the struggling really stopped because I could just pace myself. And then once I felt like I was caught up, I actually got ahead and would always get work done early. And so the change in an educational environment was pretty important. And then I was very interested in, like, for a while I was like, oh, I want to be a doctor. So I was interested in medical stuff, and kind of was on that path for a while. And then I said, well, I want to join the Army because it's fun to blow things up, So
You'd been making those Army related
yes.
play scenarios for years.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. So I had all different, a very varied interests. For a while I was like, oh, I'll be a professional piano player. Like, there's like so many different things that I was kind of interested in, and would phase between them, which made me a little less concerned when I see my kids doing that now. And it's like, well, I think I'll try this. I think I want to do that. And then it changes on a week to week. I'm like, oh, that's part of them exploring ideas. This doesn't mean they actually want to do it. It means today, I think I want to try this maybe. Right. So.
And how old are your kids now?
My boys are 17 and 18. So they are graduating from high school this year, and we're trying to move on to college and some other post-secondary learning. So
that's cool.
Fingers crossed. We'll see how that goes.
I'm curious, was it like a Montessori approach, or it was something different?
It was run out of our church, actually. So it was kind of, a lot of it was the curriculum development had in mind a lot of the homeschool movement from the late 80s, probably. Mid to late 80s, it was often done in a religious context of, we want to instill values in children, and depending on where you live in the country, your values might conflict with what is being taught in the schools where you live, right? And we saw a lot of that during the pandemic, people having, being very opinionated about vaccines one way or the other, like that kind of thing, but with a religious context. So
interesting.
A lot of the early homeschool stuff was either hippies doing it or religious people doing it. And then since in the 90s to 2000s, it kind of became a little more mainstream. And nowadays, like since the pandemic, we all realize that, well, we teach kids at homes and there are pros and cons to it. So if you are going to do it,
Yeah.
what's effective. So yeah, the curriculum was based out of curriculum that could be used in a homeschool context or in a school.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. It's awesome that your parents realized that about you and wanted to set you up for your best success and your preferred learning styles that they'd observed. That's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah.
I feel. Okay. So now you get into high school and you're trying to decide what to do next. And what do you bring in to that decision? And then what did you decide to do?
Well, I was like, one day a teacher said to me, well, what do you want to do when you like for career or after high school? And I was like, oh, I just want to join the army or something because I was in an army phase.
Yeah.
And then the teacher said, Chris, you're too smart to join the army. If you're going to join the army, you should go to West Point. And I was like, oh, what's West Point? And I looked at it a little bit. I'm like, this is kind of cool. And then it kind of went out of my brain. That was probably like late 8th grade, early 9th grade. And then I took the PSATs and did relatively well. And then, colleges start mailing you mailers. And a West Point one arrived. I said, oh, my teacher had mentioned this once. And I looked at it and said, well, I'm going to read up on West Point, and just became enamored with the idea of, this very prestigious institution with a long history of raising some great leaders and great education. And I said, oh, this is definitely what I want to do. So I started, developing an interest in that. And then I got to a point where it was the application process is quite rigorous. And it was a little bit overwhelming to say, okay, we have to get congressional nominations and then pass physical exams and PT tests and then have good grades. And it's just like all this stuff. So I said, well, I don't even know if I like the Army, so maybe I should try it first. So I joined the Army Reserve while I was in high school still, because you're allowed to, they had a waiver program. You're 17, you can join, your parents just have to sign a waiver. And then you start doing on the weekends, basically. It's like part-time Army. So got to try it out, so I liked it. And then I also, as a backup option, had applied to ROTC so I could get college paid for at Hofstra. So I got a full scholarship at Hofstra, and I was like, oh, I'll just do that and forget the West Point thing. And then one of my leaders in my unit said, you will not forget this West Point thing. The colonel wrote you a letter of recommendation, and you're not going to just take that and then just say, oh, I didn't feel like following through. So you're going to follow through. And he's like, when's the deadline? And I said, it's like 10 days from now. And he said, okay, so you're going to call me every night and tell me what you did that day to get your application in. And if you don't, I will come and kill you in your kitchen. And he was a Navy SEAL, so he had the right to say that.
And were you empowered by that, terrified, or both?
A little bit of both. So yeah. So so every day I got something done and got the application in, and then you just wait to see what happens. And then eventually one day you get a thick packet in the mail and it says, congratulations, you've been accepted, report on this day. So I ended up going to West Point. I actually went to a regular college, state school, for a year before I went to West Point during that application time, because I was just to say, all right, I want to go to college for a year and try the Army for a year before I do the West Point thing and commit to it. So
did you know anybody else before you started trying this out? Had you had any family or friend connections or church connections of people who had been in the military?
Not really. Grandparents in World War II kind of thing. But not a ton of exposure to military stuff. It was just fascinating to me. And you get a lot of adventure, which in the mind of a 17, 18-year-old boy is like, I get to do cool stuff and be a hero,
Absolutely. So. Well, and I think it was super smart of you to try to sort out ways to try before you buy type of thing too.
Yeah.
Joining the reserves and the ROTC and all of those things and trying it out. That's really, really smart. I think more folks, as they're considering transitions and career changes, should try before they buy for a little bit. Like, it's an experiment. Let's just see how it goes. Okay, so you go to West Point, and then what is life like actually on the inside? I mean, it is from the outside. You're right. It's really prestigious, looks amazing. Even for somebody to get in for a tour, there's a whole lot of procedural things
Yes.
to even get to do it. But now your life on the inside, what happens there? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of the stuff that you think would be there, which is, you show up to cadet basic training and it's, boot camp type environment. Um, One of the things that is a little shocking is because I'd done Army basic training before. So doing this is it was much more mentally taxing because you had to do a lot more memorization, reciting, and then also do things like read the front page of a newspaper, read all the stories, and be able to summarize them if someone asks you. And you
Oh,
have to do
wow.
things like memorize what are the meals for the day. And it's just like a lot of like quickly absorb information stuff, which is very intense, which is almost more tiring and stressful than do push-ups. That stuff is
Yeah.
like you just do push-ups till you can't anymore. And then you kind of like flop around trying to show effort and, it's fine. When you're trying to memorize stuff and you have to get done by a deadline and people are screaming in your face as you're trying to remember things, it's like a
Oh,
different game.
yeah.
And then academically, once you get out of that phase, you go into the academic year. You're, a freshman, they call them plebes. So you have duties and responsibilities, delivering laundry and collecting trash and doing stuff like that. Plus, shine your shoes, make your room perfect, do parades, do intramurals, do a full course load, which I don't I don't think there was a single semester at West Point where I took less than 18 credit hours. That was like the
Wow.
lightest. And I think the highest was like 23 or 24 credit hours, which included Chinese, physics, like engineering calculus, which is like the calculus above Calc 3.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
how does
Yeah.
an electron move over a three-dimensional surface? And what's the odds of an electron being in a particular place in a crystalline structure at any given time? And you're like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. So the academic demands were very significant. And I was a reasonably good student in high school, and I had a pretty good GPA at the state school I went to, but I ended up being more in the middle of my class academically and smarts wise, because there were people who are just, like valedictorians were kind of the expectation, not the exception there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like very intense, and you get a lot of imposter syndrome, and you're like, I don't belong here. Like everybody else is significantly smarter than me. And, a lot of pressure and all that. It gets better in year 3. Year 2 is the worst year academically, usually, where there's just very high course load. You also have responsibilities of mentoring underclassmen. So second year is very difficult academically. That's when I was doing Chinese and other stuff with electrical engineering, like layered.
Yeah.
Um,
How'd you pick electrical engineering?
I was always fascinated with how computers work, and not just the programming side, but also like the mechanics
Mm.
uh, and circuit design and that kind of stuff was always super fascinating, because my dad would like bring computers home from work that were like broken, that they just threw
Yeah.
away. And
Ah.
he was like cobble together the pieces and say, okay, this is how we're going to fix the computer and this is how it works. And we're going to build a computer network in our house. And like seeing how you can take a computer that's broken, fix it, turn it into something useful, connect computers together was very fascinating to me. So that's how I head in the electrical engineering direction, which interestingly, I started with electrical engineering. Then I was like, well, I don't think I'm gonna ever do electrical engineering. Like, so I should switch to a different major. So then I switched to West Point's equivalent to business, which is like a leadership and management. And I hated it. It was just like writing
Ah.
papers and reading on leadership development stuff, which I was not interested in at the time. So
You
my
wanted more hands-on doing?
yeah, either hands-on doing or that just the math. Like if you were to say, okay, write a 10-page paper or do 10 pages of math problems, I would much rather do 10 pages of math problems, even complicated
Interesting.
ones. Like
Yeah.
writing papers is like viscerally painful to me.
Hmm.
So I was like, forget this. So I switched back to electrical engineering. So
Interesting. Very
yeah.
interesting. And then what about your intramurals or your other activities outside of the coursework you were supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
how did you did you have to do intramurals and you had to do other activities?
Yes.
Or you got to choose to do other activities?
You have to. And then you
Okay.
can choose to do some. So I did a lot of stuff with music. I was a pianist at a church. I was involved in the Glee Club, and then also was a pianist for a gospel choir. So did a lot of music stuff in free time. That was the optional stuff. The intramural is you're got to do an intramural this period. So pick one and put in your wish list, and then whichever one isn't full, maybe you'll get kind of thing. So
Uh-huh.
some people would get forced to do boxing, right?
Oh, wow.
Or other people would get forced into other things they didn't want to do. One semester I had to do ultimate frisbee, and I am not good with the frisbee. So it was like painful to just be like, your teammates are like, Chris, you really suck at this. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Sorry.
What did you like intramural wise?
I like running stuff. So cross country and orienteering, which is fun. Orienteering is they give you points on a map and you got to go
Yeah,
run to them, and then you get points for which team can finish first. That's fun.
that's cool.
And I did a lot of martial arts oriented stuff. So grappling, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu type stuff, which
Oh,
I
that's
enjoyed a
cool.
lot too. So yeah.
Okay, so now after you graduate from West Point, then what? Do you
Then we
have
do,
to continue on? Yeah, and for how long or how does that work? Yeah.
yeah. So uh, you have to do 5 years on active duty. And then it's a total of 8-year commitment once you finish West Point, 5 years on active duty. And then you can leave the military after 5 years, but they could call you back within a 3-year period. So while I was at West Point, when I was a sophomore, 9/11 happened.
Mm.
So you can imagine that was a little bit of a shift in what we all knew what was coming, instead of going from, the most recent conflict, what had been the Gulf War. So before that was, we're talking like Grenada, which most people didn't participate in. And before that was Vietnam, right? So
Yeah.
we're talking a good almost 20, 30 years without a major conflict. And then all of a sudden it's, oh no, we're going everywhere. And then you start to see people that you knew get deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq. So as soon as we get out, we do training at whatever special subspecialty within the Army you have. There's different fields. There's communication fields. There's infantry, artillery, all these different fields. So I was slated to be in the infantry for a few years and then go into the communications field. So it was like a two field kind of
Yeah.
career path that they put me on, that I signed up for. So we started out doing infantry stuff and did about a year to a year and a half of training. Then did a deployment to Iraq, where we're driving around with, they said, here, all right, here's a platoon, 40 guys, you and a bunch of tanks and guys with machine guns. Don't kill anybody you're not supposed to, and try to keep the Iraqis from killing each other. Because this is
Wow.
after the initial invasion of Iraq, which
Yeah.
was in 2003. So I went over in 2006. So this is just when things are starting to ramp up, where Sunnis and Shia Muslims were in the area, were just kind of killing each other a whole bunch. And then we did the surge right after I left. So it was kind of ramping up into the, oh my God, we need to send 100,000 people here to keep it under control, which is
Yeah.
what was ramping up while I was there. So a lot of like, go somewhere, is supposed to be a bad guy there. He's not there, or he was there, but now he's not there anymore. Driving around trying to get blown up with IEDs, and then go back to the base, and then just do that every day for a year. So it was a
Wow.
very interesting experience.
Yeah.
And I said, this is not for me. I don't like this. So very high pressure situations where you don't know who is and isn't an enemy was not particularly fun. And I said, all right, I'm good with this Army thing. I then went to work at Army Basic Training on staff there, so helped plan operations and resourcing and things like that, where we trained all the infantrymen for the Army and some other support units, and trained about 10,000 people a year.
Did you like that part better because it was more structured, or how was that? Or still more like this gut feeling of this is fun and what's next?
Yeah. I was ready to kind of move on.
Yeah.
Because part of the military life is it's very controlled in some ways and not in others. So you're kind of told what you can and can't do all the time, which, as you can kind of get from my education experience, I'm very good being independent. just tell me what needs
Yeah.
to get done, then leave me alone is
Mm.
much better how I work than the constant like monitoring, micromanagement, changing missions, those kinds of things just isn't the greatest personality. Can I work within that framework? Yes. Do I like to? Absolutely not.
Right. So it's yeah. So while you can perform, your wellness and your relationships, your well-being and your relationships are kind of taking a bit of a hit because
Yep.
you've got this inner turmoil, inner struggle of I don't think this is what I'm supposed to be doing kind of deal.
Yes. Yeah. And then you have
Yeah.
the commitments, right? So then you got to
And
finish
now
it
you're
out.
stuck. Yeah.
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 And not be a sore loser, basically, call it
Yeah.
like
Yes.
you're quit and you're what do they call it? Ghost quitting or whatever.
Quiet quitting.
Quiet
Yeah.
quitting. Yeah. You can't
Yeah.
quiet quit in the army. So you see people do it, but it's not good for
Anything.
that. It's almost worse than just like playing the game
Yeah.
while you're in is much a better strategy for everyone's sanity. Um, so I did 3 years in the National Guard after that, but that was part time most of the time. They got activated to Afghanistan, but they had me come on as a budget analyst, so I helped control the money for the brigade.
How did you get
So
into that?
they were like, "Oh, you're a financial," because I started transitioning into financial planning. So they
Yeah.
said, "Okay, finances, so you should run the money stuff," because they have a role in each unit where a person helps plan out. Okay, you have, for anyone that wants to know about military and government budgeting, Congress passes a bill that says you are allowed to spend money on these things. It's very specific.
Yeah.
So then, as a budget analyst, you're making sure that the commanders are spending money on the intended appropriations
Things.
bill and then
Yeah.
tracking it all and seeing, well, what's used, what's unused. Can we use it for this one? Is it allowable? Do we have to get special permission to use it? So it's kind of knowing budgeting and rules from, Congress all the way down to a soldier getting paid for, hey, this soldier needs to show up. But is that because it's regular National Guard, or is that because they're about to deploy to Afghanistan? Different pot of money, different training guidelines. So you'd get very different pots of money that you have to kind of keep track of. What are we using this for, and how much is left here, and are we allowed to do that? So a lot of advising folks on how to handle money.
How did you get into that? So it's like you had done this electrical engineering stuff and then you've
Yeah.
done this infantry stuff.
Yes.
And then where along the way did this introduction and ability to act on that and realization that you kind of enjoyed that aspect come?
Yeah. So when I had gotten home from Iraq, I said, well, what do I want to do if I'm going to do something else? And I started reading on a lot of different topics and kind of exploring different things. I was interested in becoming a physician's assistant. So I went to EMT school and got an EMT license. And I liked it, but I was like, I don't know that I love this enough to live a PA life because it's a lot of like hours and time commitment.
Yeah.
So I tried that. And then I was like, well, what do I really like? I like helping people. And I also like numbers. And I'm also interested in personal finance. So what about being a financial advisor? And then I started exploring that, talked to some West Point grads who were financial advisors. And they said, yeah, well, I mean, if you're getting out, why don't you work with us? So when I transitioned out of the Army, I got, financial licenses and started doing financial planning and saying, oh, this is where I can mix together some of the stuff I enjoy doing, which is helping people. This is
Yes.
the other backstory. When I was at West Point, I had decided like, hey, I want to be a chaplain. Like what I'd rather do is become a chaplain, but they weren't allowing people to go from West Point into chaplaincy because they didn't want to, the war was going on. So they didn't want to send somebody to get a master's degree for 2 to 3 years before they could use them. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they said, all right, you got to do the infantry thing. And after a while, I was just like, I'm done with other people telling me where I can and can't live and having no say
Yeah.
in a lot of my own autonomy. So, but I had that desire to help people on a very spiritual, personal level, right?
Yeah.
So there was that kind of constant thread in how I approach and think about things. And you can do that in financial planning where you're saying, okay, what do you want to do with life and how can we align financial resources so that that can happen? So I get to use that. I get to use the finance interest in personal finance and what to do with money because that's interesting. I get to do the math stuff, some technical stuff, and it'd bring it all together and ended up being a very good fit. Got a master's degree, MBA with a major in financial planning. So
Yeah,
yeah,
how did
it's
that
been
come
great.
about that you decided that you wanted to get the master's degree? And
Well, I was looking at, okay, what do you need to advance in a career as a financial planner? Become a certified financial planner is one thing. You have to take coursework for it. And it's like, well, I might want to go into management, but I also might want to go into just staying as a financial planner. So if I got an MBA that has a major in financial planning, then I could have both and then use that if I went into like upper level management at a financial planning firm or just stayed as a one-on-one advisor. So that's what kind of made me say, all right, looking ahead, how do careers progress? What helps somebody progress?
that's
And
awesome.
yeah, so that's when I went and got the master's degree.
And again, I'm impressed with your go try it out, like contact people in the field. This is exactly what is recommended for people to do, yet most people don't do it. They just get into something and then realize, oh, maybe I don't like it. Maybe I coulda, shoulda asked somebody ahead of time to realize what's a day in the life like or how do they like it and discerning
Yeah.
their own things. But um,
And
super
sometimes you
cool.
don't know until you try it on, right? Because sometimes you look at it
Absolutely.
and you're like, oh, that's great. Like a pair of like a shirt or something. And you're like, oh, that would look good on me. And you put it on, you're like, that does not look good on me. Sometimes you just got to wear it a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
And also like listen to your own self while you're trying it, right? Because even
Yes.
I did try some of the things. Like in high school, I went and
Yeah.
shadowed a lady who was a chemical engineer,
Yeah.
and I had a little bit of a visceral feeling of, "Ooh, gosh, I'm not sure I want to work in a dark, dingy plant environment." But I overrode it because I was thinking like,
Oh,
"Oh, no, 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 no. I'm hearing that a lot of CEOs and companies were chemical engineers, so therefore I should start as a chemical engineer and I can do it and I can do it
yes.
well." So I think I'll override that for now. And then
Yeah.
later it comes to, it came up again. But I'm super impressed that you tried it and listened and made your informed decisions based on data and holistically all of the things. That's super cool. Okay, so now you get your. Then did you do your master's degree part time or full time?
I did it full time while working full time. So I did it.
So
I
how was
did.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, it was an executive MBA. So they set it up for people that were working. So you do
Yeah.
nights, like even afternoons, evenings, not weekends, but it would have
Yeah.
been better if it was on weekends. So I got permission from my commander to do this because the I was activated with my National Guard unit. I would wake up, put on my uniform, do budget analyst stuff, change out of my uniform into a business suit over lunch, meet with clients,
Wow.
put my uniform back on, finish out the duty day. Then I would go change clothes or just wear my uniform to class and go to grad school classes. And every semester I took 3 to 5 grad classes. So I did like a 3 year program in like 2 years, 2.5 years, while working full time, having two small kids, and I was stressed all the time. So
Yeah.
not
How
the
did that work for your
recommended course of
relationships? And
action. Not
yeah,
good.
yeah, like that. Yeah, they're like, yeah, stress the whole time. What did that stress the
Yes.
whole time look like?
It was being disconnected from my spouse and kids, and then also wondering why I feel like I'm getting punched in the stomach constantly. Like, it's like a gut feeling of like there's
Yeah,
just too much. Uh, yeah. So anxiety and depression and all that stuff going on while still being very successful in like
correct.
multiple things at once. But
Yes.
things suffer while you're doing that, right? While you're trying to pull all that off.
Yeah, it's performance, relationships, well-being, and I
Yeah.
expect, and it's so hard also when you're chasing that performance and you think like you're doing the right thing for your family and
Yes.
for your kids, like for the long term.
Oh,
And
I
in
said
the
that so many times. I was like, oh, this is for my wife. This is for the kids. And it's like, well, maybe you should like play with them more and like spend time there and like reevaluate, you know?
yeah, yeah, that's tricky. Okay, so then how long did that extreme stress go on before you were able to take action on it?
Yeah, I mean, at grad school was about 2 years. So it was pretty heavy for about 2 years. And then after, right as I was finishing up grad school, I had one semester left. I had 2 to 3 classes. And I had started the semester, but I had applied to a job up in Connecticut, and we were living in Georgia at the time. So I went to Georgia State in Atlanta. We were living outside of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, hey, I got a new job. I got to start this job because I was working on straight commissions before. And I got activated with the National Guard. So I was still like taking care of my clients, but it wasn't producing very much money because I could just
Yeah.
take care of clients. I couldn't get more.
Yeah.
So then income was dropping. And I knew that I just can't stay on this commission based like hamster wheel thing. I really got to work at a firm where I either have a salary or they aren't constantly saying, okay, this year you have to sell this much to make this much money. Like I just really wasn't interested in that kind of environment. So I started working at a financial planning firm in Connecticut, a wealth management firm, and moved the family up there, did some grad school. They let me do the classes remotely, which wasn't really a thing at the time.
Yeah.
So they let me do it. I just had to like write in tests or fly down for a test or two. And I just got on a plane, flew down to Atlanta from Connecticut to do a couple tests and finished out the degree. They let me do it, which was great. So that worked out pretty well. And then things kind of calmed down a little bit, having a more of a, 9 to 6 kind of job.
Yeah.
5
More
days a
steady,
week. Yeah.
predictable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine what your life would be like if your career aligned with who you are, what you do best, and actually fueled the life you want. At Next Success, we support all ages and stages through career transitions, from students exploring majors or careers to job seekers actively searching or reimagining their next move to professionals committed to self-awareness and leadership growth. Stay connected and explore what's possible at nextsuccesscareers.com and follow Next Success Method on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Okay, and so now you're, and throughout this time, while you're doing all these things you're supposed to do and chasing your performance, what about those other side interests like music, like religion-related items? Were those also being fulfilled, or did they get on hold for a while?
A lot of stuff was on hold, especially on the music religion side. I was having a lot of spiritual struggles from having seen combat related things and all of that. And it's pretty well documented that when someone has PTSD type struggles, it often affects spirituality, usually negatively, because it kind of does something to your brain that kind of switches that off.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that switches off is the ability to connect to others in a way that is kind of spiritual. So a lot of struggle with that, and then trying to figure it out, the reading and like trying to fix what was probably a like spiritual emotional problem with intellectual, like, oh, is this real or not? Right. And trying to be more like apologetics based or like philosophy based, consideration of the existence of God, the good and evil, and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, a lot of these things are interesting intellectual questions, but when it comes down to it, it's more of interrelational and emotional questions, not as much an intellectual pursuit. So you keep trying to, fix a problem with the wrong tool, and you wonder why you don't get anywhere. So
how did you go around that whole thing? Because I think that's something that a lot of people, and they may not even realize, maybe they can't connect what the PTSD experience was or why all of a sudden they're, and of course questioning is part of somebody's development and all of that. But then how did you work your way around or through?
Yeah, so it's an ongoing process, and part of it is learning that spirituality is a bit of a process and a journey, and it isn't a once and done thing. You say a prayer and then you're in the club kind of thing, or you just learn some rules, and if you follow them, everything's going to be fine. That's not really how life works, right? So learning to think in a like broader context has been part of that ongoing journey. So not trying to find answers, because if you find the correct answer, then you have the right solution, everything will be fine. That's very engineer with intolerance, right? And it's like, well, we don't want a lot of tolerance. Like in electrical engineering, there's certain tolerances that are fine, other that are not. Like heat is always bad in electrical engineering. It just degrades everything, and everything melts, and then things degrade, right? So trying to go from a no tolerance type scenario to a tolerance for potentially really bad things happening or really good things happening and being okay with it is kind of part of that journey now, right? And more of a maturing, because we learn, if you're raised in a religious context, you receive religious information, thought, and feelings with the mind of a child.
Right.
And then if you don't let those things mature as you mature, you will wonder why there is a disconnect between perhaps how you approach life and your spirituality, if there's a disconnect, because of different maturity levels that are kind of existing within you. You're like, I'm mature in one area, but this other area I'm completely immature, or I don't know how to get to maybe immature is a little too judgy. Maybe it's more like, I don't know what the next step is. Like, how do you be a mature spiritual person?
Yeah. Yeah. And so how did you go about diving into that?
Talking, right? So some of this is getting out of my own head and talking to people, right? And hearing their experiences, and also from people that would be a little outside of what would be my close religious circle, right? So that way you kind of get a difference in perspectives. And often people will be in a different religious circle because they just experienced something different. It's not necessarily about a set of beliefs, because most people are not particularly interested in assenting to lists of beliefs. If you ask someone, well, what's the difference between a Methodist and a Catholic? They were like, well, the services are kind of different, but I couldn't really tell you. That's probably what you'll get most of the time, where I was raised that way, right? Most people are not as interested in it. They'll have a feeling or some way that they engage with it that is kind of the differentiator for them. So saying, okay, you are from a Free Methodist church versus a regular Methodist, like, what is your spirituality like, right? And seeing differences and how there are probably broader ways of thinking. Some of the churches that I went to growing up were pretty fundamentalist. So they probably a lot of black and white thinking that eventually needs to be expanded to, all right, if we're going to treat life with wisdom, which is skillful living, knowing how to deal when situations are not black and white is what wisdom is, right? And we're encouraged as Christians in scripture, it says, be wise, and it's like,
yeah.
But if you're only taught to think in a black and white way, or the people around you tend to do that, unlearning that can be very, get a little lost, right? Because you feel unmoored. It's like, oh, if I just anchor to these tenets of truth, then you'll always be fine. It's like, well, anchors are not connected to a ship with a bar of iron, right? It's a chain that can float. It still needs to be connected to something real, but there's got to be some floating, right? Otherwise the ship is going to like sink, end up under the water, right? So how do we have that flexibility and floating within a range of what's true, meaningful, and those kinds of things has really been part of that maturing process.
And again, it's like you're starting to have questions in an area of your life, and your go-to is, let me get a little bit outside of myself and let me start having conversations with others in different perspectives. And then that is helping you to decide your own path by considering those perspectives of other people too, as you're going along your journey. This is a really, it's quite, and because in some ways, a bit of what you're doing now is being that helpful person on the other side of the question to help somebody through their journey. And, and you have that desire, again, to want to help, because that's been one of the ways that's been so helping to you. So how did you go from working in a firm, or are you still working in a firm, or it's your own firm now?
I own my own firm now, because one of the firms I worked at, this is in 2016, they said, the future is just talking to your advisor over the phone or on Zoom or something, or they didn't have Zoom at the time, like Citrix GoToMeeting, I guess, or Skype. So they didn't, this is pre-pandemic, and they're like, we're going to close down all the face-to-face offices. So they just laid everybody off, basically, or said, come work in a call center. And I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not working in a call center. Like, I had visited.
This is about to take away from my freedom and autonomy a little bit here.
Yes, freedom and autonomy, and never seeing your clients. I love seeing clients in person. And I said, all right, well, they said, well, if you're not going to use, we'll give you a severance package and then, have a nice life. So, and I said, all right, always wanted to have my own firm. Is now the time to do it? My wife said, you should just do it. And I said, all right, here we go. So starting with no clients because we couldn't, solicit other clients from the firm, start from zero, start a firm. And then we're going on almost 10 years this year. So we'll be at 10
Wow.
years in September. So
Yeah. Does your wife do something related to financial planning as well? Or she's just
no,
super supportive?
she was just very supportive. My wife was at first an elementary school music teacher, and then we have a son with special needs, so she had to stay home with him for a number of years, and now she is finishing up her master's degree to be a therapist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So cool. Again, on this very helping people um, trajectory. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Okay. So you start your own firm,
Yep.
and you've already have all these processes in place, and you've been doing, budgeting and financial planning for a long time at that
Yep.
point. And then where did it come into play that you're like, I think that a book would help out this part?
Yeah, I always kind of wanted to write a book, and people tell you, oh, yeah, everybody should write a book, shows your expertise and all this stuff. And I was like, well, that's not really why. I enjoy teaching people. Um, it's fun for me to teach. I like seeing the lights come on with people, like in client meetings. Like, okay,
Yeah.
what? Like instead of just saying, here's the facts about how the stock market works, or here's why you should buy this type of insurance and not that type, because this one isn't particularly good.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing like, well, where's the client at in their knowledge? And where do we need to get them to? What's in their best interests? How do I explain it in a way that's easy to understand so I don't have to teach them everything, but they still feel comfortable, right? So it's that skill set. I said, that would be really good if I could take that and translate it into a book because I could help more people. I can only work with so many people individually. I'm starting to run out of slots, right? We take care of roughly 75 families right now. And I'm kind of running out of space. We just hired a new advisor at the firm to help out with that. But it's like, I've learned a lot through having done this for, almost 17 years now. How can I still help people outside of me just doing it? And that's where the book comes from is, all right, what have I learned that, when an advisor says you're going to be fine to retire, but the client doesn't feel it or believe it, and therefore they have restrictive spending. And I'll see, this goes back to my mother's early death and stuff. I am much more aware of mortality than many people are in a more visceral, real way. Because I've seen people die, from my West Point classmates dying in combat to, my mother passing and seeing, okay, I see clients that'll die with millions of dollars and worry the whole time and never really used it to engage in a meaningful life outside of themselves. And then it's like heartbreaking to see that. And you say, well, how can I help people realize you're going to be okay? And if things go off the rails, there are ways that we can deal with that. Like, we're not going to all just end up in a van down by the river, to, reference an SNL skit. There are ways that we can adapt as humans as life throws challenges at us. But what is meaningful? What is purposeful to you? And then how can we relieve the worries? I've had clients who have tens of millions of dollars say to me, I still feel like I could lose it all tomorrow. And it's not like all their money's in stocks. Like, we have safe investments too. It's like, they just have that, the other shoe is going to drop feeling. How can we address that? And some just the common persistent questions that I hear constantly, having worked with probably like 1,000 people at this point and hearing their financial life story. How can we consolidate those and then just address those fears head on, one at a time, in a way that gives people something practical to do? Because sometimes we just read a book and it's like self-helpy, but then I never do anything with it.
Right.
So the book was written as, we're going to have a little client story, and then we're going to talk about a little bit of the technicals inside the story. But usually it's, the client's worried about this. What are some ways that we can calm that worry down? And what's the source of the worry? And then write yourself how you are going to do it. Right?
Yes.
And how are you going to plan your own life? Yeah.
It's very approachable. Because at first you're like, oh man, this is a little bit thick. And now we're going to talk about
it is thick.
Confronting my retirement. And even though it's thick, that's because it's but yet each chapter is not like horrible. it's like you're saying, it's action oriented, it's approachable. You can do it in small little nuggets. And then
Yeah.
you have like your own little workbook of like, okay, now how are you going to apply this to your thing and do it? And I
Yes.
like that even, as you're trying to say, like, what do you want your retirement to look like? Like, hey, why don't we just start to actively plan out what could 2 weeks of it look like for you,
Yeah.
And then how does that work? I thought it was like super practical and approachable. Now, but I also have to say, you tried to do that a little bit in West Point and go into that personal development and leadership thing, and it was
Yeah.
so not aligned with what you wanted to do in that moment to write a 10-page paper. And
Yeah.
now here we are, decades later, a 384-page awesome resource. So how was that writing process, or was it taxing, or was it encouraging because you're choosing it all on your own?
Both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah. So the writing process started out with me attempting to write something. And then I came up with somewhat of an outline, said, okay, I'm going to try to write on this. And then the book started to be technical. I'm like, you know what? ChatGPT could probably write half of this. So I'm like, let's see what ChatGPT comes up with. And I would have it like I was trying to have it write the boring stuff.
Yeah.
Like, which is, what is an annuity? And I'm like, all right, ChatGPT, summarize an annuity like this. And then I came up with some version of a book, and it was terrible. I was like, this is not good. I need help. So I hired a company that book launchers, which has been a great experience. And they can work at you with that however you want to do it. You can totally write it yourself and then use their editors. You can work with an author that can help you like put your words into something that someone else would want to read. You can do a combination. So we end up with a combination of, all right, we're going to outline things. This is the topics I want to talk about. Here's my attempt to write it. We just threw out the ChatGPT stuff. It was too technical, and there's too many technical books out there already. Nobody needs that. They need to say, okay, why do I still worry about money? Can I do something about it? Yep. That's what we want to do, which kind of wasn't out there. So write an outline, and then we'd say, all right, bullet point 1. And then I would do a sub outline, write some things. And then one of the writers would interview me, look at what I had written, and then merge what the interview stuff, what I had written, and what they write, and turned it into one thing. And then we did a whole write-up of that, ended up being a 75 or 80 page book. And I said, all right, it's there, but it's not particularly readable and not super interesting. It's kind of there. It's not right. So we got a second writer to do the same thing all over again. We took that initial draft, did all the interviews all over again, redid the outline, and then got to the point where I'm like, why don't we just make it a workbook where we talk about a topic and then the person does something with it. Yeah. And we redid the book again. So it's just like 3 to 4 iterations over 2 years to get it to this. And I couldn't have done it without, the team of people helping, because I probably would have stopped.
It's really well done. It's a helpful, practical workbook covering so many different areas, right? Because you're saying, yeah, because there's money and there's worrying about money, and there's what do I want to do next, and not just with my money, but with my life and my time and my relationships. And you hit on every single one of those. So tell me, some people who've had the book, how does that help them through your process, and so that you can, give them the best advice?
Yeah. So we have had a couple of people that have read it. And even if they're already working with financial advisors, like, it's so helpful to think about, like, what do I actually want to do with myself? And then like maybe quiet those worries down a little bit. And I actually gave the book to my advisor. I'm like, that's good. This is not written for me to like steal clients from advisors. I don't need that. We can do that with, you do use marketing budget for that nonsense. This is, how can we communicate as people in community about money and what we're afraid of and how to live a good life, right? Yeah. That's the goal. And if it's between you and your spouse, that's where we want to start. If it's you and your advisor, that's where we want to start, right? So using it as a tool to facilitate conversation is a core tenet in the book. And I even communicated that, hey, if you're like struggling with these thoughts in your head all the time, get out of your head, talk to people, form a little study group, read the book, whatever you want to do, but get in community. Because as Americans, we very much like to work on our own, independent. And I relate to that. I'm a very independent person, but without community, we lose some of the things that we are genetically kind of engineered for, which is to
Yes.
have community, and it's dangerous to go alone.
Yes.
We need some community around us. So a lot of people have seen that there's the community aspect that's strong. And I've had clients that were thinking about retiring, just say, okay, I'm doing this now, and here's my timeline for it. And just like actually be the catalyst to just, they're there, but they're not jumping out, right? They're not jumping out the plane door voluntarily, right? They would have to be kicked out of the airplane for
Yeah.
parachuting.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
in the military, we do that. You get kicked out if you're not supposed to, if you just freeze in the door because you're scared to jump. Somebody will place a boot strategically on your hindquarters and you will be floating pretty soon.
Yeah.
So it helps some people voluntarily say, this is what I'm going to do next. This is how I'm thinking about it. And it's been really great to see people like open alive, like, okay, I'm not just retiring to die, right? Or I'm not just retiring because I hate my job. Don't run away from work, like run towards retirement, right? Run towards this next phase of whatever it is, and help and have some agency in that. Like life happens to you, but you can happen to life, right? Like there is an interactiveness to it, and you can be dealt with some bad cards, but also some good cards. You got to play what you're dealt, but don't be an idiot about it, right? Like know when to hold them, know when to fold them. It's a song. It's also good in life, So seeing people take the book and say, okay, this part was super helpful, and it just made me think differently of, oh, I can do this. Or if I'm worrying, should I just confront the worries, or do I actually have something to be worried about? And where should I get help if there's worries, right? Like, don't just sit there worrying, right?
Yeah.
And there's a stagnation that can kind of occur. Instead of stagnating, let's get going and do stuff.
I love it. I love it. Now I'm curious, how has your definition of success changed over time? Like when you were really little, what did you think it was to be a successful adult? What did you think from that vantage point? And then I'm curious, we'll go into after that.
I think some with my religious background, success was kind of, it's like you want to be a competent, good person. Success wasn't something to be chased, right? It was almost like a negative. But even though we admired people that were successful, so it was a little bit of mixed messages probably. And that's just me interpreting it as, a child basically.
Yeah.
And it's saying, people trust in money, right? And they act like money will solve all their problems, and it doesn't. It solves some problems and creates others, right?
Yeah.
And just like relationships solve and create all kinds of problems, right? You're not as lonely in a relationship, or maybe you are. Maybe you're more lonely than you started, right? There's these things that we seek after, and seeking to fill a hole, or scratch an itch, or serve a function, right? That serves some function for us. And then, but there's always the pro and the con, right? To something. There's a balance to it. So I'd never really thought, oh, I'd be successful if I was this. It's more like I have a drive, like an internal drive to do something, and I just want to do it. Right. Like, so it was very, I feel like I have more internal motivation. And it's towards a particular goal. So I'm not goal driven as much of I'd like to hit this number by this date. Sometimes I'm like that, but it's more like I want to become a really good financial planner. What does that look like? And I'm just going to go do it until I feel like I'm there. Right. Yeah. So success is more about doing, I think. And now it's shifted to more about how am I being as I'm doing.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So your authentic success is not just the doing, it's the being while you're doing. And
yes.
And for you, how do you want to be while you are doing?
Yeah. I don't want to be stressed all the time. And, dealing with, I got to, like the compulsion to work almost, where it's like, I got to work, I got to do. And it's like, okay, if you were take that doing part and calm yourself down a little bit, what would that look like, right? What if you were more engaged with people, less engaged with tasks? And what if you prioritized some downtime on the weekends and not, I'm going to start a high stress project next in my free time, which is often what I do. So, it's like I write a book and then move offices and then renovate a building and then hire a new employee and train dogs and do music. And it's like, all right, you're doing a lot of stuff, but how are you while you're doing it? And if the answer is sometimes fine, but sometimes not good at all, then how are we consistently getting towards what does it look like to be fine most of the time? You don't have to be fine all the time. This whole, like, you can be content all the time or happy all the time isn't really a thing.
Right.
But I don't think you should be miserable all the time either, even when you're externally successful, right?
Yeah.
So those of us that learned how to display to others that we are successful by either how we present ourselves, carry ourselves, or the things that we do. Sometimes we learn to mask the other, like, I don't really feel connected with my spouse stuff that needs to be fixed. That you can't show that in a business context necessarily anyway, but then you learn, like, okay, I should get help about this, right? And then you start getting help and then saying, all right, I'm going to, like, work on my relationships and learn how to talk to my spouse in a way where our communication gears don't grind, right? And we're like, and working on those things, and not just being super task success oriented with tasks, but also my way of being and what is it like to be around me, right?
Yes.
When I'm not working, because I can be, like, a good person to work with. I'm usually a good coworker, I think other people would say, but sometimes if, like, I'm not working, then I don't know what to do with myself. So I'm like, kind of like they call them working line dogs. They're like police dogs that if they're not chasing or biting something, they don't know what to do. So they chew a hole through the wall. Right?
Aww,
like, that's kind of me. It's like, I don't know what to do with myself. So I'm going to just break something. Maybe I'll bite somebody. I shouldn't, but like, I got some energy. I got to get rid of it. So I'm a little bit of a working line dog where I like to work. But I also need to learn how to chill out, because sometimes, if you ask the owner of a working line dog, sometimes people will accidentally adopt them. And then they're like, my dog never chills. It doesn't know how to settle. And then you have to train the dog to settle. So as I do dog training kind of as a hobby, it's like, okay, you got to teach some dogs how to settle. And I have to kind of do that to myself.
But that's, again, it's so cool that you're, like, recognizing that, right? And admitting that and then working on it. Because there's so many people that they don't. They just override it. And you're like, I'm fine. And everybody else is the problem. Versus like, oh, maybe there is something in my own life outside of, what I do, but who I am that I can improve on. So that's
and then sometimes there were times when I was very, like, I'm fine the way I am. And then you're like, well, why are you suffering all the time then? It's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. For how long do you want to choose the suffering versus
exactly.
finding the relief points? How do people work with you? How do they find you? How do they work with you? How do they get this awesome book?
So they can find the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere you get ebooks, or you can order a physical copy if you want. I do recommend a soft cover copy or the hardcover so you can write in it. If not, just, like, print out the page or take a screenshot of it with your phone and write on it, because the writing and doing of the book is really important. And then if someone wants to see like, hey, Chris, I like your approach to how you think about money in life, then they could look at greatpath.com. That's where it tells a little bit about my firm and the other folks I work with to, make sure people are on a good path, a great path, right? And it's like, what does the path of your life look like? Can we help you untangle that golden knot? That's like, I'm trying to follow the golden thread of my life, but I keep hitting a knot, right? It's like tangling up. How do we get that untangled so I can keep moving forward and following my sense of purpose? And then what are the technical aspects of that we need to do? So my website talks a little bit about that as well, if somebody's interested in working with the firm.
What's next for you? What's on your horizon of what you'd love to do in the next X period of time?
So we're just starting to work on podcast YouTube content. So we're going to start with the book and kind of do a read with me through the book. Maybe not actually reading it. Maybe I will. I don't know. Because the chapters are so short. It's like 5 to 10 pages, a lot of the chapters, that you could read it in like 3 minutes out loud probably. And then kind of show examples of people working through different aspects of the book, or me talking with someone about it. Just so people have, like, if they don't have a community they can do it in, they have a little bit of interaction with it. And then kind of expanding, the people that we can help through, watch some YouTube content and say, okay, what are the things people struggle with when they transition into retirement? How do I make sure I don't become an alcoholic accidentally? It happens sometimes, How do I make sure I don't get divorced right at retirement? Also a thing that happens. because you don't know what to do with yourself now that you're not working and you drive your spouse crazy.
Yeah.
So all
Yeah.
those things, seeing examples of it. So that's one thing we're working on. And looking to do some more dog training too on the side. I'm about to take a course on how to train service dogs. So,
so cool.
Yeah. So some stuff on the outside of work as well as a big push.
I love it. I want to thank you so much for sharing more of your story, your journey. Thank you for this amazing resource, for this beautiful conversation. And I will put all the links in the show notes as well. But thank you, Chris. This has been just a beautiful, amazing experience to have you on the podcast. I know you're going to help so many more lives.
Oh, good. I'm glad it was helpful and it was good talking with you.
Chris, thank you. I appreciate the way you approach retirement planning and your insight that a strong plan doesn't always calm the nervous system on its own. Thanks for listening to Your Next Success with Dr. Carolyn Sangal. Remember, authentic success is yours to define and includes aligning your career to support the life you want.